Welcome back to The Truth of Money, where we follow the money to find the truth the mainstream media won't tell you. May 1171. The port of Constantinople. At dawn, Byzantine soldiers moved. Silently, coordinated, planned. Every Venetian shop, doors smashed, every warehouse, locks broken. Every ship, ropes cut, hands shackled, goods plundered, ships seized. Thousands of Venetian merchants thrown into dungeons that morning. Women, men, children, all of them. Why? Because Venice had become too powerful, master of the Mediterranean, and the Byzantine Empire was afraid. When news reached Venice, what did Doge Vitali II Michel do? Declared war. That day, that hour, without hesitation. But he faced a terrifying reality. The treasury was empty. War needed money. Enormous amounts. Navy, soldiers, weapons, provisions, logistics. Normal tax revenues completely insufficient. Borrowing was essential, but how? From whom? That day, the Venetian government made a decision that would change the course of history. It would take forced loans from wealthy citizens. Prestito. Mandatory credit. But this wasn't just confiscated money, because the government would pay interest, 5%. And even more importantly, these debt certificates could be bought and sold in the market, in the free market, a type of security, the world's first government bond. This decision was the birth moment of the modern financial system. This is how Montevecchio began. Let's understand the situation now. In medieval Europe, everyone suffered from money shortages. Kings, dukes, bishops, city-states, all constantly broke. Why? Simple mathematics. Expenses were astronomical. Wars lasted years. Castles were being built. Palaces, cathedrals, walls, each swallowing fortunes. And revenues? Ridiculously low. The tax system was primitive and inefficient. Feudal lords collected taxes from their own lands but refused to give to the king. The church? Paid no taxes. God's property to God. Peasants? Already poor. You can't squeeze blood from a stone. Merchants? Knew 1,000 ways to evade taxes. So how did rulers find money? There were several methods, all terrible. First method, selling or pawning valuables. Crowns, jewels, lands, sold in emergencies. But this was a one-time solution. A crown is sold once. Then what? Second method, currency debasement. Cheaper metals mixed into gold and silver coins. Copper, tin. Coins look the same, but their value dropped. Result? Inflation. Prices soared. People revolted. Economy collapsed. Third method, borrowing from bankers. But this was extremely risky. Interest rates were hellish. 15%, 20%, sometimes 40%. And if the debt wasn't paid, bankers went bankrupt. Economic crisis erupted. The ruler lost credibility. None of these three methods were sustainable. Temporary patches. Venice found a different way, borrowing from the public, but doing it systematically and sustainably. The Monte Vecchio system was the product of this vision. In 1171, the Venetian government demanded mandatory prestito from all wealthy citizens. The amount was determined according to each citizen's wealth, meticulously calculated. The richest merchants paid thousands of lire, middle-class merchants hundreds, small shopkeepers tens. Approximately 150,000 lire collected in total, an astronomical figure for the period. Let's compare. A large warship cost around 10,000 lire. So 15 warships. But this wasn't just confiscated money. The critical difference was here. Venice made these commitments. 1. 5% interest would be paid. Annually, regularly, guaranteed. 2. Debt certificates could be bought and sold. If a merchant needed money, he could sell his certificate to someone else. This second point was the essence of the revolution. Liquidity. A secondary market formed in the square near the Rialto Bridge. Every day merchants gathered. A broker would shout, selling Montevecchio, face value 100 lire, offering at 95. Another, buying, I'll take at 92. Bargaining, negotiation, agreement. This was the first example of a modern bond market, but not stocks. Government bonds were being traded. The system was complex but functional. The Venetian government established the Ufficio del Debito Pubblico, Public Debt Office. What did this office do? Three critical tasks. First, it kept debt records. Each citizen had an account in the Great Ledger. Debts were recorded. Second, it managed interest payments, every year, regularly. Third, it recorded transfer transactions. When a bond changed hands, it was entered in the ledger. There was transparency. There was trust. So where did the name Monte Vecchio come from? It meant Old Mountain. Why mountain? Because the debt ledger grew enormously thick. Over the years, thousands of records were added. The ledger rose like a mountain. Over time, each new debt campaign was called a Monte. Monte Nuovo, New Mountain. Monte Novissimo, Newest Mountain. But the original 1,171 debt always remained Monte Vecchio, the first mountain, the main mountain. In 1202, Venice faced a new crisis, the Fourth Crusade. The Crusaders wanted to go to the Holy Land, but they had no ships. They came to Venice, met with Doge Enrico Dandolo. Dandolo was old and blind, but his intelligence was razor sharp. He saw a tremendous opportunity for Venice. He made this offer to the Crusaders. We'll give you ships, but first do a job for us. Sack Constantinople. Yes, you heard right. Christian Crusaders would sack Christian Constantinople. It happened in 1204. Constantinople fell. The plunder was horrific. Gold, silver, holy relics, everything stolen. Venice took the lion's share. Wealth loaded onto ships, transported to Venice, and most importantly, trading privileges. Venice now dominated Constantinople. Unlimited access to ports, customs exemptions, monopoly rights. This wealth flowed to Monte Vecchio. Debts were paid. New debts taken. The system expanded. Now, not just forced loans, but voluntary bond sales began too. Citizens wanted to invest in Venetian bonds. They were seen as safe. By the 14th century, Venice's debt system had become extremely sophisticated. But the biggest test came in 1379. The War of Chioggia. The Genoese besieged Venice. The city faced starvation. The treasury was depleted. Montevecchio was the last resort. The government made emergency borrowing. Interest rates raised to 10%. Citizens contributed both from patriotism and self-interest. The thought, if Venice falls, our money goes too. Venice won. But the fiscal situation was terrible. Debt had reached astronomical levels. Interest payments consumed half the annual budget. The government had to find a solution. The solution? More borrowing, new loans to pay old debts. Sounds like a Ponzi scheme, doesn't it? But it worked. Why? Because the Venetian economy kept growing. Trade was developing. Tax revenues were increasing. The system remained sustainable. In the 16th century, the situation began to change. The rise of the Ottoman Empire hit Venice's eastern trade. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottomans. This was a strategic blow to Venice. Trade routes endangered, costs increased, revenues fell. Then Portugal and Spain's discoveries in the Atlantic Ocean changed the spice trade. The Indian Ocean could now be reached via the Cape of Good Hope. Venice's Mediterranean routes became secondary. Trade volume fell. This economic decline affected Montevecchio. Tax revenues fell. Interest payments became difficult. Sometimes Venice postponed interest payments. Sometimes it unilaterally reduced interest rates. Bondholders suffered losses. But the system didn't completely collapse. It just weakened. In the 17th century, Venice was no longer a first-rank European power. The Netherlands, England, France, these were the new powers. Venice became a small regional player. But Montevecchio still operated. Interest was still paid. Bonds were still bought and sold. The system lived for exactly 600 years. In 1797, Napoleon conquered Venice. The independent Venetian Republic ended. Montevecchio ended too. The Austrian Empire took over Venice. Debts transferred to the new government. But the old system disappeared. Today, in Venice's old Palazzo Ducale, Doge's Palace, Montevecchio records are on display. Old ledgers, yellowed pages, handwritten notes. Tourists take photos. But most don't know what these ledgers mean. These are the birth certificates of modern finance. Montevecchio's legacy can be seen everywhere today. Every country issues government bonds. U.S. Treasury bonds, German bunds, Japanese JG, GABs. All are continuations of the tradition Venice started in 1171. Governments borrow from the public, pay interest. Bonds are bought and sold. Modern economies try to apply the same principles. Political stability increases investor confidence. Rule of law protects property rights. Economic growth ensures debt sustainability. Without these three factors, government borrowing becomes dangerous. Greece experienced a crisis in 2010. Debt reached 180% of GDP, became unsustainable. Default became inevitable. Venezuela, Argentina, Lebanon all experienced similar crises. Japan is a different example. Debt exceeds 250% of GDP, but no crisis. Why? Because most of the debt is owned by domestic investors. The Japanese people invest in Japanese government bonds. There's trust. Also, Japan is economically stable. Inflation is low. This makes high debt manageable. Montevecchio teaches us this. Government debt is not bad. If properly managed, it can finance economic growth. Infrastructure, education, defense. These are long-term investments. Financing through borrowing makes sense, but discipline is essential. Debt must be kept at sustainable levels. Interest payments must not consume the budget. Venice's experience also shows the power of financial innovation. Monte Vecchio was the most sophisticated financial instrument of its time. Venice gained a tremendous advantage over its rivals. It could borrow more cheaply. It could raise capital faster. It could finance wars. It could expand trade. Modern economies operate with the same logic. Financial innovation supports economic growth. Stocks, bonds, derivatives, crypto all enable more efficient capital distribution. But every innovation also brings risk. The 2008 financial crisis resulted from misuse of derivative products. Innovation must be balanced with regulation. Another lesson from Montevecchio, the importance of transparency and record keeping. Venice's Great Ledger system recorded all transactions, who borrowed how much, who received interest, who sold bonds. This transparency created trust. Investors could trust the system. Modern financial systems are based on the same principle. Blockchain technology, for example, keeps distributed records. Every transaction is transparent and immutable. This increases trust, reduces manipulation risk. In conclusion, Venice's Monte Vecchio system is one of the turning points in financial history. The invention of the government bond laid the foundation of the modern economy. Governments could finance major projects by borrowing from the public. Investors found a safe and liquid investment vehicle. Venice was a small city-state, but through financial innovations, it became the superpower of its age. For 300 years, Monte Vecchio was the foundation of Venice's power. The system survived through the trinity of political stability, rule of law, and economic growth. Today, boats passing under the Rialto Bridge pass by the square where old bond traders shouted. Tourists admire Venice's beauty, canals, palaces, churches. But Venice's true legacy is invisible, in financial systems, in bond markets, and central banks. The spirit of Monte Vecchio still lives.